Okay, I'm assuming you've made a couple of boxes. Maybe you haven't. You follow this in a way after you get a little more experience. But let's say you've made a few cylinder boxes and you want to up your game by a little different design. This a little more challenging clam-shaped box. I first saw this box demonstrated by Ray Key 15 years ago after I'd been turning a couple of years. I really liked the design, and then a couple of years later I saw Jimmy Clues turn a similar one. I'm going to make a fairly large size one because that's the size block of wood I've got. We may tone it down some, but this is a piece of Bradford pear. It's only a couple years old, so I may have to rough turn it and wait a little while before I finish it. So let's put it between centers and get started. I love turning Bradford pear. It's a very nice wood, but this is still considered green. It's only a couple years old, and as we know, it takes wood a year per inch plus a year, and with this one being over 4 inches long, it would take almost 5 years perhaps for this to dry. So we're going to take this little plastic template and mark centers. I just look for space all the way around to make it even. And use my little birdcage awl on each side. And then we're going to put this between centers and rough it out. Use my multi-pronged center so I don't have to hammer it in. I can just spring load it. I can just crank this thing down. Let's get a wide center here. And as always, spin it and make sure it's going to clear. The box doesn't have to be this big. This blank happens to be 4.5 inches square by about 5 inches long. We may not make the box that big. May be drier than I think because these little chips that are flying off are stinging my hand. Let's put on a glove. Let's speed up a little bit to around 1500. Go ahead and square up the sides, put a tenon on each side. For that, I'm going to use my beading and parting tool, or my wide parting tool. Bring this up now some. Just try to true it up some before I put on the tenon. Right about there. Let's just mark this. Double check it with my go no go gauge. That's about right. And we'll do the same on the other side. True it up. Tenon on both sides. Now we're going to mount the block of the chuck. First thing I do is kind of clean off this face a little bit, get rid of any dust or anything that might cause the chuck to bind and wipe off the surface. Put it on. I don't give it a big pop, I just kind of tighten it now. Now we normally put what's going to be the lid in here first. That's assuming we're going to have an overfitting lid. In this case is Bradford pear with no special grain characteristics. It doesn't make any difference which side I put in there first. Get this in there, tighten it up, turn around the other side, and tighten it up. Now we're going to part it off. I've got a sketch that gives me some idea, but in this case, this is a big blank. I'm not going to get real fussy with it. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And I encourage y'all to get you a portfolio of some sort, or a 3-ring binder, and keep some of your project notes in it, especially sketches, drawings that you might use as a basis for some project. And if you get something you really like, you may want to go right back to it and not have to find it again, and that's an example in this particular project of this sketch I used for a clamshell box. The lid is going to be somewhere about like that. I'm going to go ahead and part this down, slow the speed down a little bit. Go straight in, and then you drop the handle for a peeling cut. When you go down about 3/4 of an inch, you better give yourself a little more room. And I got it down to less than 1/4 of an inch. It'll just twist off. I knew I didn't get it completely rounded, so I've got to come down maybe 1/4 inch, so I'll go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'm going to make this design too big. And when I clean this up, I'm not going to have a good fit, so let's just do that. I'll just use a roughing gouge. Come down, probably no more than 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to shape this a little bit. A lot of spindle work at 2 inches or smaller, in which case a 3/8 inch might go to. But for this larger one, I'm going to go to a 1/2 inch. So let's just start rough shaping it a little bit by just taking off some of this wood. I'll refine the shape later, but one of the things I do know is I'm going to have this lip rounded a little bit. Now let's hollow it out. Let's get the tool rest crossways. And I'm going to cut a little divot in there. I'm going to use a depth drill, although usually for lids it's not necessary, but a little divot so the drill bit won't wander. Okay. Use my 1/4 inch hand depth drill with little markings on the side. I'm going to look at it here to see how far down I want to come, and a little bit short of this. Now, because this is a spindle, the typical way to hollow it is coming from the center out to the side. All right, still got a pretty rough edge here from the parting cut, so let's kind of clean that up a little bit. I'm just going to anchor the tool, skim across, open it up just a little bit. Alright, tool almost parallel, comes straight into that hole, it's bouncing on that drill hole, it wasn't quite over center. Open it up a little bit, about scoop around. Another 1/8 of an inch or so to go down. You can see the tear out. This is unusual for Bradford pear, based on my experience. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little bit of sanding lubricant in these areas. Just kind of relax the grain a little bit on both sides. And then I'm going to come in there with a scraper and see if I can't use a conventional scraper and then follow it up probably with a negative rake. It's got a good burr on it. I can switch now back to a smaller tool rest. Just a little more convenient. Handle slightly up, cutting it slightly down. Not pressing very hard. Alright, let's check it for tear out. Okay, it looks like it pretty much eliminated the tear out I was getting. Got to come in here a little bit more. Got a little bit of ridge there. I think I'm going to go ahead and switch to a negative rake scraper for some fine tuning. Use this one, and that curve will get in there just fine. Light touch. Just a little bit of a line I see there. I don't know what's. Still got to get into that corner. This is getting a little bit too big to get in there. Let me switch this last little part to a little smaller tool with a shorter radius. This negative rake scraper is a little light for a lot of projects, but if you're not very far off tool rest and you need that tight curve, then this is the way to go. Now, this is a box, so before I get carried away, I've got to have a parallel flange here to fit a parallel wall to fit in that flange on the base. Because it's going to be a relatively short flange, I'm going to use this refining tool. This is Cindy Drozda style that I ground out an old Craftsman I picked up at a garage sale, a yard sale or something. All right, so I line this side up. Not going to be very big on this, so I'm down to, I can measure it. See how big it is. Probably no more than 3 millimeter or so, maybe 1/8 of an inch. 0.16 inch, which is 4 millimeter. And I'd say that's probably just about right. I'm happy with that curve. I'm happy with the finish. I've got to sand it a little bit, but I didn't true up this side of that cut like I should have completely. So I could use a couple of tools. I could use a skew. I'm going to use this pyramid tool or point tool. I want it just a slight slope inward, so when the top and the bottom meet and there might be a little bit of movement, it's still going to fit on the outside. It's going to touch on the outside. So I'm going to use this as a scraper. This is a great box making tool. Got it. Now I'll go ahead and sand this up. Now I want to round over the top edge of that lip right here. Now, in case I confuse you with this flange, the box had the flange on top. This time I'm making the flange on the bottom, so the base is just squared. I'm just going to use the skew. Back off a little bit so I've got full contact, and I'm just going to come around the edge here a little bit. Get the speed up some. And sandpaper will handle the rest of it. Because I've got a nice clean finish in there, surface, I'm going to go ahead and start with 150 grit. And then go up to probably 400. I buff a lot of my projects, but it's hard to buff without going to the trouble of mounting bowl buffs for the inside of this box. So I'm going to use some homemade sanding lubricant, and it takes that 400 grit and takes it to the equivalent of 800 or 1200. And also gives it a nice oiled finish on the inside. So now we take off the top and set it aside as we do the base. And then we'll wind up using the base as a gem chuck. First thing I want to do is get this outside to match. I think before I even do that, I'm going to go ahead and create the flange that this is going to go onto, and I can see how far I got to go down. This is one of the benefits of having the lid recessed and having the flange on the bottom, because if I make a mistake, I could just back this down a little bit and create a new flange that fits. Just have it chamfered in there just a little bit where it's just fitting on. Okay, now this is a little bit long, so let's go ahead and take it down. Slipping on, but still a little tight, so this is where you gotta be patient and just sneak up on it. Get that speed up just a little bit. Some people want to use a skew for this operation. I prefer the beating and parting tool. Okay. And this should probably do it. Okay. That's got it. So now I'm going to do the outside, shape this. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the tailstock support. I could also wrap this with tape, but I'm not sure that's going to be necessary, although it is a pretty small flange, so if I get a bad catch here, it will go flying. So let's go ahead and bring up tailstock. Just to hold it in contact. Now, I took a shop-made depth gauge. I'll find it here, and I measured that to the bottom, so now I can use that to transfer the inside to the outside, which is always important to the box, so you don't make the inside bigger than the outside. So that's the bottom depth of the box, and I want to come out from that, maybe 4 millimeter, a little less than 1/4 of an inch, and that's going to be the top of the box right there. Okay, so let's waste this wood down. And because this is a spindle, with the grain orientation this way, you're going to go from large to small. And because it's fairly small down here, I'm going to switch to a smaller spindle gouge. Start getting down to the final. So I'm just going to come in here, just almost the pencil mark. Now I'd like to make this a slight OG. That shape, I think I've just about nailed it, and I've got a nice smooth shape except for a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to go ahead and remove this bump before I do that cleanup. Slowly way down. Okay, now I'll refine this shape with a negative rake scraper or a skew. Pretty snug fit, so let me just use a pocket knife to help get it off. Okay, now I can feel this. Thickness is good here, but it's a little thick through here. I want to take my OG back a little bit, so I know I've got some material. Got to get rid of this bump. I've got a little room here. Let's put that on. It's gone a while Forgot to take my wedding ring off. Okay. Let me refine that just a little bit. Get a little bit of bump here with a negative rake scraper. I'll get my skew in here. Find that curve just a little bit. Nice fine shavings. This curved skew, this profile, it helps for this. Sometimes I like a straight profile, sometimes I like curved, but when I use this negative rake scraper, I like the curved shape for a box lid. And I think it's a pleasing shape. I'll go ahead and sand that. Just a little sanding lubricant, keep the dust down. I'll go through all the grits up to 400. Okay, we can see I've got to come down here 4 or 5 millimeters on the box side. We finished with the lid now. Let's go ahead and take that off. There we go. Now we need to round over this lip to match this one nice and round, so we'll do that with the spindle gouge. And now we start shaping. Now let's get a feel for how deep that box ought to be. I want it to be a little deeper than the lid, so if I put the lid side down, and I think somewhere around here might be about right. And then I'm going to go ahead and mark that with a parting tool. I will have something to shoot for. Not enough to change the integrity because we've got to hollow it out as well. But let's go ahead and shape this down some, just a little bit. So here's where most of the wood's got to come. I don't want to futz here. I want to futz where the wood's got to come away. Then keep coming back. I see so many people, they'll get fixated on one spot and they won't think about where the wood's got to come off. This is a little big for this 3/8 when I'm out here at 4 inches. So let's switch to the other ½ inch. A little more leverage, a little bigger handle. All right, I've got a feel for it now. Let's start hollowing. Okay, I want to do a depth drill, but let's make a little bit of divot so it won't wander too much. Look for the little mark on here that's closest to where I want to go. There we go. Now, like deja vu all over again, we're going to hollow this out same way we did before. We're going to come in here and work from the inside to the outside. Pivot out. Alright, I'm going to continue the rest of the inside with a conventional scraper with I've got a fresh burr on it. Burrs don't last very long, especially with M2 steel. They do better with that powdered metal on Thompson tools, the M42 like on the Carter and Sons. Nice stringers. I actually want to undercut this a little bit, so I need to get another tool to get under there. So I'll use this round nose hook scraper to get under there. Now I'll pick up the cut again with the other scraper. Okay, let's get a feel for that. Alright, time to do a little power sanding on the inside now that I've got the walls the appropriate thickness and ready to sand. I sand through all the grits and then I use a little abrasive paste on the inside. Deja vu all over again. I've got to round over this profile here, and it's easiest to do that with a skew or other negative rate scraper. Just to have a nice curve. Okay, time to part it off, and then we got to figure out how to jam chuck it. I've already taken my preset gauge to know how much I've got at the bottom. Okay, now we got to jam chuck it. I'd prefer something softer, but yeah, let me see what I can find softer wood to jam chuck it. Alright, let me see if I can take this this scrap pine, got a busted out piece here. For a jam chuck, this will fit over, and let's see if that'll work. I've only got to take off maybe 1/8 of an inch, so let's just come in this way. We realize if we come in straight on this way, we're going to pluck up that end grain and we're going to have a mess on our hands. So we just come in slightly. Clean it up a little bit here. That's got it. That's a nice good fit. So let's go back and double check the depth here. That's going to be the bottom of the box right there. So let's mark that and bring that curve around. So we got the tailstock support up. Now we'll just start wasting away wood. ahead and sand this before we remove this nub. Now let's remove this little nub. I'm going to use this detail gouge with a point that I can kind of get in there pretty easily. There in the middle. Almost, I can go up there just a little bit more, certainly right there. And that's where we're going to come in there with a negative rake scraper to kind of clean that up. Okay. And then we'll see 320. And there we go. Pops off. Feels good. Put the lid on it. See if I, not much grain to match on this, but this is pretty close to done. Just refine that fit a little bit. It's a little stiffer than I want. I may have to do a little more hand sanding on that. I've forgotten that step. Or I may leave it the way it is. When you get one that's a little stiff, what I find sometimes when you just buff it and you buff it with wax on the inside, the outside, you'll get enough of a slip. So that's not a bad fit. I did a video of this similar project a couple of years ago with a clamshell box that had a inset lid, and longtime viewer and supporter David Walser asked, why did you use an inset lid instead of an overfitting lid? And my response was, well, that's the way Ray Key did it, and that's the way I saw Jimmy Clues demonstrated, but I'm not sure that was a real good answer. So when would you use one over the other? Well, when you have a overfitting lid, where you get the flange on the bottom, such as the one I made this time, you have more room for content, so that's a plus. And here's a dramatic example of that in this box. You can see where I've got a long flange for a suction fit, that having this long flange obviously creates more space to put items in the box. In any case, when you do turn it, you want to make sure you do the recess on the lathe first and then do the flange part next, because if you make a mistake with a flange, you can always move back and adjust it. Very difficult to adjust a lid to fit a flange. Inset lids are frequently used on larger boxes where there's more wood movement, and cross-grain boxes such as this example here, where you typically allow for it to be a one-hand fit. If you've got any preference for an in-fitting lid versus an over-fitting lid, please leave it in the comments below with an explanation of why. If you like this video, click the like button. It helps the algorithm feed this video out to other wood turners. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button, because I'd like to get 100,000 subscribers so I can get a silver play button before I quit making videos. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, you hear?